I'm Hope. I'm 32 years old and I spent 15 years building my parents' business from the ground up, only to watch them hand everything to my brother in a single afternoon. I believed in fairness. I thought hard work mattered. I trusted that my parents would see what I'd sacrificed for our family. But then my father looked me in the eye and said, "Your brother deserves it." They gave Kyle the house, the savings, the company I'd built with my own hands. All I got was a thank you. 1 month later, everything collapsed. And the truth behind their decision finally came to light. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, go ahead and hit that like button because you'll understand every word of this. And subscribe because what happened 1 month later changed everything. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a household where tradition meant everything. My father, Robert, was 65 when this story reached its breaking point. He'd built Anderson Auto Repair from nothing when he was just 25 years old. Every bolt he turned, every engine he fixed, was supposed to be building something for the future. My mother, Susan, 62 at the time, handled the books and answered phones. They were a team or so, I thought. Kyle is my older brother. He's 3 years older than me, which made him 35 when everything fell apart. I'm the baby of the family, the girl. And in my father's world, that meant something very specific about my place in the order of things. From the time I could understand words, I knew Kyle was different, special. He got the attention, the investments, the belief. Boys need to be strong, Dad would say. Girls need to be careful. Kyle played football, took karate lessons, went to expensive summer camps where he learned leadership and confidence. I asked for ballet lessons once. I got 3 months before Dad said it was getting too expensive. We couldn't afford it. But somehow we could afford Kyle's travel soccer team that same year. When Kyle turned 16, Dad bought him a used pickup truck. Nothing fancy, but it was his. Freedom on 4 wheels. When I turned 16, Dad handed me a bus pass and said public transportation builds character. I rode that bus to community college while Kyle drove off to State University in the truck that would eventually be traded in for something better. The message was clear. Kyle was the investment. I was the expense. Kyle would carry on the Anderson name and the Anderson business. I would get married someday and become someone else's responsibility. That's how Dad saw the world, and nothing I did seemed able to change his mind. But I refused to accept that story. If I couldn't get handed opportunities, I'd build them myself. I worked as a waitress through high school, saving every tip. I took a receptionist job at a dentist's office, learning how businesses operated. I put myself through community college, paying for every credit hour with money I'd earned. I studied accounting and business management because I wanted to prove that I understood what Dad had built. I wanted him to see me as capable. Kyle, meanwhile, got a free ride to university. Full tuition paid by Mom and Dad. He was supposed to study business administration, get his degree, come back ready to take over the family company. That was the plan. But Kyle discovered something else at college. Parties. Freedom. The ability to skip class without anyone checking up on him. After 2 years of failing grades and empty promises, he dropped out. I remember the day he came home and announced he was done with college. I expected Dad to be furious. I thought there would be consequences. Instead, Dad clapped him on the shoulder and said, "College isn't for everyone, son. Hands-on experience is what really matters. You'll learn more in the shop than you ever would in a classroom." Just like that, Kyle's failure became wisdom. His quitting became a career move, and he walked into a job at Anderson Auto Repair with the title of assistant manager despite knowing absolutely nothing about running a business. His salary was generous, his hours were flexible, he'd show up late, leave early, take long lunches. Dad just smiled and said, "He's learning his way." I was still taking classes, still working 2 jobs, still trying to prove myself worthy of a chance. Nobody asked if I wanted to work at the family business. Nobody wondered if I might have something to offer. I was invisible. the girl who would eventually leave. So why invest? But I held on to hope. I told myself that one day, if I worked hard enough, if I proved myself undeniably valuable, Dad would finally see me. Really see me. I just had to keep pushing forward. After I finished my associate degree in accounting, I was 23 years old. I'd proven I could manage money, understand business operations, and work harder than anyone I knew. Anderson Auto Repair was struggling to keep up with the paperwork. Mom was getting older, tired of managing the books. She wanted to retire, spend time with her garden and her friends. The shop needed someone who understood accounting. I knew I was qualified, so I gathered my courage and asked Dad if I could help. Dad, I can do this. I studied accounting and management. Let me take over the books from Mom. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. This is dirty work, Hope. Grease and grime and demanding customers. You sure you want to spend your days in a mechanic shop? I want to help our family business, I said. I want to be part of what you built. He agreed, but with conditions. My salary would be below market rate. We're family, Buck, he explained. You understand that we can't pay you what we'd pay a stranger, but you'll learn a lot and that's worth something. I accepted. I was just grateful to be included, to finally have a seat at the table, even if it was the smallest chair in the corner. I started with basic bookkeeping, taking over from Mom, but within the first week I realized the system was a disaster. Records were scattered across multiple notebooks. Bills were sometimes paid late because nobody tracked due dates. Inventory was managed by memory rather than documentation. Kyle, who was supposed to be the assistant manager, spent most of his time chatting with customers about sports and occasionally helping someone pick out air fresheners. I didn't complain. I just started fixing things. I digitized all the records, creating spreadsheets that tracked everything from inventory to customer history. I researched accounting software and convinced Dad to invest in a system that would automate invoicing and payment tracking. I found expenses we didn't need, subscriptions to services we never used, suppliers charging us more than market rate. Within 6 months, our profit margins improved. Not because we were getting more customers, but because I'd eliminated waste and improved efficiency, Dad noticed. You've got a good head for numbers, he said. It was the closest thing to praise I'd ever received from him. I didn't stop there. I saw opportunities everywhere. Our shop only did repairs, but customers kept asking about oil changes, detailing services, tire sales. We were sending them elsewhere, losing revenue. So I put together a business plan. I researched costs, projected income, calculated return on investment. I presented it to Dad with charts and data. He was skeptical at first. We've been doing just fine with repairs. Why complicate things? Because our customers want more, I explained. And if we don't provide it, they'll find another shop that does. We could increase revenue by 40% in the first year alone. He thought about it for a week. Then he agreed to try. We expanded services slowly, starting with quick oil changes. Then we added a detailing bay. Then we partnered with a tire distributor. Every expansion I'd predicted succeeded. Within a year, our revenue had jumped by 42%. We hired more mechanics. We extended our hours. Anderson Auto Repair became the go-to shop in our area. I was working 60 hours a week, managing operations, handling customer service, overseeing marketing, maintaining the books. Kyle still had his assistant manager title, but everyone knew I was running the business. Customers would come in asking for me specifically. They'd say, "Is Hope here? I trust her to handle this right." It felt good to be recognized, to be valued. But there was always a shadow over that recognition. When suppliers came to negotiate contracts, Dad would introduce Kyle first. "This is my son Kyle. He runs the place." Then, almost as an afterthought, "And this is Hope. She helps out with the paperwork." Paperwork. As if managing the entire financial infrastructure of the business was just filing receipts. As if the systems I'd built, the growth I'd generated, the customers I'd cultivated were just helping out. I swallowed the hurt every time. I told myself it didn't matter what Dad called it. I knew what I was doing. I knew my value. Someday he'd acknowledge it properly. Someday he'd tell people the truth. I just had to be patient. I just had to keep proving myself. But deep down, a small voice whispered doubts. What if no amount of proof would ever be enough? What if in his eyes I would always be just the girl who helped with paperwork? I pushed that voice away and kept working. Kyle turned 32 and married a woman named Amber. She was 28, beautiful and expensive. She loved designer handbags, luxury vacations, and the lifestyle she thought Kyle's family business could provide. The problem was that Kyle's actual salary couldn't support Amber's tastes. So he started borrowing money from Mom and Dad. The first time it was $5,000. Just until I get back on my feet, Kyle promised. Dad handed over the check without hesitation. He's building his life. We have to help family. I knew about the loans because I managed the accounts. I watched as 5,000 became 10,000, then 20,000, then 50,000. Kyle never paid any of it back. Every few months, he'd have a new emergency. The car needed repairs. Amber needed medical bills covered. They were behind on rent. Each time Dad would sigh and write another check. Dad, he owes you over $50,000 now, I said one day, trying to keep my voice neutral. Maybe we should set up a payment plan. He'll pay it back when he can, Dad said. Don't worry about it. Family takes care of family. But family didn't seem to work both ways. When I'd needed money for textbooks, I'd been told to get a student loan. When I'd asked if they could help with my apartment deposit, Dad had said I needed to learn financial independence. But Kyle could drain their savings with promises he never kept, and that was just helping family. Around this time, Dad started talking about retirement. I'm getting old, Hope. 65 this year. I need to start thinking about what happens to the business when I'm gone. My heart jumped. Finally, maybe he'd recognize what I'd built. Maybe he'd see that I was the logical choice to take over. I'd been running the business for 9 years at that point. 9 years of growth, stability, and success. But I wasn't invited to the planning conversations. One evening, I stayed late finishing inventory reports. Dad's office door was closed, but I could hear voices inside. Dad, Mom, and Kyle, talking about the future. I shouldn't have listened, but I couldn't help myself. I stood near the door, my heart pounding. Kyle will take over as owner. Dad's voice came through clearly. It's the right thing to do. What about Hope? Mom asked. She's done so much for this place. Hope is capable, Dad said. Very capable. But Kyle is my son. The business should go to him. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. Mom didn't argue further. Nobody spoke up for me. Nobody questioned whether tradition should matter more than merit. I stood outside that door feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. I found Mom the next day. I heard you talking last night about the business going to Kyle. Mom's face flushed. Your father has traditional values, honey. He believes the son should inherit. But I'm the one who's built this place up, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Kyle barely shows up. He doesn't know how anything works. I know, sweetheart. I know you've worked so hard, but your father's mind is made up. She reached for my hand. Kyle needs this more than you do. You're smart, capable. You'll be fine on your own. Kyle wouldn't survive without this. That's what it came down to. Not who deserved it, not who earned it, but who needed it more. And because I was strong, because I was capable, because I'd proven I could build something from nothing, I would be fine losing everything. Kyle, who'd coasted his entire life, who'd never proven anything except his ability to spend money he didn't have, needed the safety net more. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip tables and demand fairness. But what good would it do, Dad had decided. Mom had accepted it, and I was just the daughter, the capable one who would be fine. 6 months later, Dad had a mild heart attack. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to scare him. The doctor told him to reduce stress, take it easy, maybe think about full retirement instead of just cutting back hours. That was the final push Dad needed to make his decision official. He called a family meeting. Kyle and Amber came over to the house. I drove over from my apartment, my stomach in knots. I knew what was coming, but hearing it out loud would make it real. We sat in the living room, the same room where I'd played as a child, where I'd done homework at the coffee table, where I'd once believed my family loved me equally. Dad stood up formal and serious. "I've made my decision about the estate," he announced. "Kyle will inherit the business, the family house, and our savings." The room tilted. I'd known it was coming, but the words still hit like a freight train. The business I'd built, the house I'd grown up in, the savings that represented 40 years of work. "Hope you've been wonderful." Dad continued, looking at me with something that might have been affection or might have been pity. "We appreciate everything you've done, but your brother has a family to support. He needs this security." Kyle was grinning, actually grinning. Amber squeezed his hand, her eyes bright with calculation. She was probably already planning how to spend the inheritance. I found my voice, though it shook. "Dad, I've worked at that shop for 9 years. I grew the business. I created the systems that make it profitable." "And we're grateful," Dad said. "But Kyle is the rightful heir. He's the man of the family after me." "Rightful? Based on what? Based on gender?" Dad's face hardened. "Based on tradition. Based on what's right. Your brother deserves it. He's carried the Anderson name. He'll pass it to his children." Mom touched my arm. "Don't make this harder, honey. This is how things are done." I looked at Kyle. My brother, who'd never fought for anything in his life, who'd been handed every opportunity and squandered most of them. "You think you deserve this?" He shrugged. "Sorry, sis, but Dad's right. It's tradition." There was nothing else to say. The decision was made. My 15 years of work, my sacrifice, my dedication, all of it meant nothing compared to the fact that Kyle was born male and I wasn't. 1 week after that family meeting, they held a small ceremony at the shop. A lawyer I'd never met came with documents already prepared. Everything had been decided without me. I sat in the corner of the office where I'd spent 9 years building something I thought would matter. The lawyer read through the transfer documents. Kyle would become the official owner of Anderson Auto Repair. He would receive the deed to the family house worth approximately $450,000. He would receive access to the savings account, which held $200,000. He would own all business assets, all inventory, all equipment. "So, Mr. Anderson, you're transferring everything to your son Kyle," the lawyer confirmed. "Please sign here." Dad signed. Kyle signed. They shook hands. The lawyer didn't even look at me. As far as he knew, I didn't exist. I was just someone who happened to be in the room during a transaction that didn't involve me. Nobody thanked me. Nobody acknowledged what I'd built. It was like I'd never been there at all. The next day, Kyle showed up at the shop with a new attitude. He found me at my desk, going through accounts receivable like I did every morning. "Hope we need to talk about your role here," he said. His voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Confidence, authority. He was the owner now, and he wanted me to know it. "What do you mean?" I asked, already feeling the ground shift beneath me. "Now that I'm running things, I need to make some changes. Amber's going to take over the bookkeeping." I stared at him. "Amber doesn't know anything about accounting. She'll learn, and honestly, I need to cut costs. The business has expenses we don't need." "What expenses?" "You," he said flatly. "I'm reducing your hours to part-time, 20 hours a week, and cutting your pay by 30%. The air left my lungs. "You're cutting my pay. After everything I've done for this business." "Or you can leave if you want," he said, shrugging. "Up to you, but those are the options." I wanted to throw something. I wanted to scream that this business wouldn't exist in its current form without me. But Kyle was the owner now. He had the legal right to do whatever he wanted, and what he wanted was to push me out while pretending to give me a choice. I couldn't stay, not under those terms, not working part-time for poverty wages in the business I'd built while watching Kyle and Amber destroy everything I'd created. I had some dignity left. "I'll leave," I said. Kyle nodded. "Probably for the best." That night, I drove to my parents' house, the house that now belonged to Kyle. I needed them to know what he was doing. I needed them to see how wrong this all was. Amber answered the door. She looked me up and down with barely concealed disdain. "Oh, Hope, what do you want? I need to talk to my parents." "Kyle and his parents are having family dinner," she said, emphasizing the word family like I wasn't part of it. "I am family," I said. She shrugged. "Whatever. They're in the dining room." I walked past her into the dining room where I'd eaten thousands of meals growing up. Dad, Mom, and Kyle sat around the table. No place was set for me. Nobody had expected me to come. Nobody had invited me. "Dad, did you know Kyle is forcing me out of the business?" Dad looked at Kyle, then back at me. "He's the owner now, Hope. He makes the decisions." After everything I've done 9 years of building that business, Mom set down her fork. "Hope, honey, maybe it's time you found your own path. You can't work for your brother forever." "I offered her part-time," Kyle said. "She's being dramatic." I looked at the three of them. My father, who'd always valued tradition over fairness. My mother, who'd chosen peace over standing up for her daughter. My brother, who'd been handed everything and learned nothing except entitlement. "I spent 9 years building that business," I said, my voice shaking. "I gave up my 20s, my social life, my dreams. I worked 60-hour weeks while Kyle played golf. I turned a failing shop into a thriving business, and all I get is being pushed out." "You got paid for your work," Dad said coldly. "Nobody forced you to do anything." "Yeah, sis," Kyle added. "You're acting like we owe you something." Amber laughed. "Some people are just entitled." The word hit me like a slap. Entitled. I was entitled for expecting fairness, for thinking my work should matter, for believing my family might actually care about me beyond my usefulness. I stood up. "You're right. Nobody forced me. That was my mistake, thinking family meant something." I walked out of that house. I didn't look back. I didn't say goodbye. There was nothing left to say to people who couldn't see what they'd done, who couldn't see me. I drove back to my apartment and cried for 3 hours straight. Then I dried my tears, updated my resume, and started looking for a new job. If my family didn't want me, fine. I'd build a life without them. I'd done it before. I could do it again. But the pain didn't go away just because I made that decision. The betrayal sat in my chest like a stone, heavy and cold. I'd lost my family and my life's work in the span of a week, and they'd done it without even understanding why it was cruel. I found work as a bookkeeper at a small firm across town. The pay was lower than what I'd made at Anderson Auto, but it was honest work with people who appreciated what I did. I rented a small apartment, smaller than the one I'd had before because I couldn't afford the same rent on my new salary. The first few weeks were hard. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, thinking about everything I'd lost. The business I'd built, the family I'd believed in, the future I'd worked so hard to create, all of it gone because I'd been born the wrong gender in a family that valued tradition over truth. But slowly, I started to heal. I made friends at my new job. I joined a book club. I started going to yoga classes. I remembered what it felt like to have time for myself, to not work 60-hour weeks, to have a life beyond proving my worth to people who would never see it. I deleted social media. I didn't want to see Kyle and Amber posting photos of their new life in my family's house, funded by my family's money, running my business into the ground. I needed space from all of it. But 3 weeks after I left, I got a phone call. Marcus, one of the longtime customers from Anderson Auto. He'd been coming to the shop for 20 years, since before I started working there. Hope, I'm sorry to bother you. I heard you left the business. I did, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I wanted to ask you something. Is everything okay with the shop? I brought my car in last week for a brake job. They charged me $800, and when I picked it up, it was making the same noise. I went back and they said they'd fixed it, that the noise was something else. But Hope, I know cars. They didn't replace those brake pads like they charged me for. My stomach dropped. Did you talk to Kyle about it? I tried. He was rude. Told me to take it or leave it. Hope, I've been a customer there for 2 decades. I've never been treated like that. I'm sorry that happened to you, Marcus. It's not your fault. I just wanted you to know. I won't be going back, and I've already told 3 other people about my experience. Word spreads fast in this town. After Marcus hung up, I sat with the phone in my hand. Part of me felt vindicated. Kyle was already screwing things up, but mostly I just felt sad. That business represented 40 years of my father's work and 9 years of mine. Watching it crumble brought no joy. More calls came that week. Sarah, who'd been bringing her family's cars to us for 15 years, called to say she'd been overcharged and the service was sloppy. Tom called to say they'd kept his truck for 4 days longer than promised and never apologized. Jennifer called to say the new mechanic Kyle hired had been inappropriate and made her uncomfortable. Every call was the same. The quality had dropped. The customer service was terrible. Kyle didn't seem to care about anything except collecting payment. And worse, I heard from a supplier friend that Kyle had fired 2 of our best mechanics to save money, replacing them with inexperienced workers who'd take lower wages. Amber, who knew nothing about accounting, had apparently missed several bill payments. Suppliers were starting to refuse credit. The business I'd carefully built, the reputation I'd cultivated, was falling apart in less than a month. I didn't reach out to Kyle. I didn't call Dad. They'd made their choice. They'd decided Kyle deserved everything despite having earned nothing. Now they could live with the consequences. But 4 weeks after the ownership transfer, my phone rang. Mom. Hope, honey, we need to talk. Her voice was strained, worried. What is it, Mom? There's a problem with the business. Kyle says they're losing money. Fast. Customers aren't coming back. And he made some investments that didn't work out. She paused. Your father wants to talk to you. Can you come over? I should have said no. I should have hung up and let them figure out their own mess. But despite everything, I was curious. I wanted to see them face what they'd done. I'll come over tomorrow, I said. That night I couldn't sleep. What did they want? An apology. Help fixing Kyle's mistakes. Money. Whatever it was, I knew one thing for certain. I was done being invisible. If they wanted something from me now, it would be on my terms, not theirs. I pulled up to the house the next afternoon, my old house, the house Kyle now owned. It looked the same on the outside, but I knew everything inside had changed. This wasn't my home anymore. I was a visitor in a place that used to be mine. Amber didn't answer the door this time. Mom did. She looked older than I remembered, tired. Hope, thank you for coming. She hugged me, and I let her, but I didn't hug back. I wasn't ready to forgive yet. Dad was in the living room. Kyle sat on the couch, looking nothing like the confident, smug person who'd kicked me out a month ago. He looked stressed, scared. His hands were clasped between his knees, his shoulders hunched. No sign of Amber. Where's your wife? I asked Kyle. Visiting a friend, he muttered, not meeting my eyes. I sat down in the chair across from them. Mom said there's a problem. Dad cleared his throat. He looked uncomfortable, ashamed. Hope, thank you for coming. I know things have been difficult between us. That's one way to put it. We need your help, he said simply. The business is in trouble. I looked at Kyle. Tell me what happened. Kyle fidgeted. The customers left. They said the service got bad. Did it? I had to cut costs, he said defensively. I fired a couple of the mechanics. They were expensive. I hired cheaper guys. Were they qualified? They said they were. And the complaints about overcharging about sloppy work? Kyle shrugged. Some people just complain. Dozens of longtime customers all suddenly decided to complain for no reason. He didn't answer. Dad spoke up. Kyle also made some financial decisions, investments. I turned to Dad. What kind of investments? I met this guy, Kyle said. He told me about cryptocurrency, said he could double our money in 6 months. It was a sure thing. My blood ran cold. How much did you invest? Kyle looked at the floor. $150,000. You gambled away $150,000 of the savings. It wasn't gambling, he said weakly. It was an investment. What happened to the money? The market crashed. We lost it all. I sat back trying to process this. In 1 month, Kyle had driven away the customers, destroyed the reputation, and gambled away most of the savings. The business my father built over 40 years, the growth I'd created over 9 years was circling the drain because Kyle thought he knew better than everyone else. We're losing about $20,000 a month now, Dad said quietly. At this rate, we'll lose the house in 6 months, the business in 3. Mom was crying softly. We don't know what to do. That's why we called you, Dad said. He looked directly at me for the first time, really looked at me. You're the only one who knows how to fix this. We need your help, Hope. I let the silence stretch out. Let them sit with their desperation. Let them feel what it's like to need something from someone you've thrown away. Now you need me, I said finally. Dad nodded. I was wrong. I see that now. I should have given you the business. You earned it. You built it. But you gave it to Kyle instead, because he's your son, because tradition mattered more than merit. I was wrong, Dad repeated. His voice cracked. Please, help us save the business. You can be the manager. You can be the owner. Whatever you want. Just please don't let us lose everything. Kyle spoke up. I'm sorry, sis. I really am. I thought I could do it. I thought it would be easy. I didn't realize how much you actually did. Please come back. Mom reached for my hand. We're family, Hope. Please. I pulled my hand away. Family. That's an interesting word coming from you. Where was family when you gave everything to Kyle? Where was family when you pushed me out? Where was family when I built that business for 9 years and got nothing but you help with the paperwork? I know, Dad said. I know we hurt you, but please, don't let us lose everything because of my mistakes. I looked at the 3 of them, my father broken and desperate, my mother crying and ashamed, my brother humbled and scared. They'd created this disaster. They'd chosen this path. And now they wanted me to save them from the consequences. I'll help, I said, but on my terms, not yours. Kyle sat up. Anything, whatever you want. First, Kyle signs the business over to me, completely. I become the sole owner. Kyle looked at Dad. Dad nodded. Do it. Second, the house goes to me too. You can live here, but it's in my name. Mom gasped. But where will Kyle and Amber live? They can rent an apartment, like I've been doing. Kyle's face paled, but he nodded. Okay, I agree. Third, Kyle works for me, as an actual employee, minimum wage. He learns this business from the ground up the way he should have years ago. That's fair, Kyle said quietly. But there's something else, I said, looking at Dad. Before I agree to any of this, I need you to say it. Say what? That you were wrong, that I deserve to inherit, that gender shouldn't have mattered. I need to hear you say it. Dad's eyes filled with tears. He stood up slowly, walked over to where I sat, and got down on one knee. My father proud and traditional on his knees in front of me. I was wrong, Hope. Completely wrong. You deserve to inherit. You earned it every single day for 9 years. Gender shouldn't have mattered. Tradition shouldn't have mattered. The only thing that should have mattered was who built the business, and that was you. I let my old-fashioned thinking blind me to what was right in front of me. You are the reason that business succeeded. You are the reason we had anything worth inheriting, and I threw you away because I couldn't see past my own prejudice. I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry. The tears I'd been holding back for a month finally came. Not because the apology fixed everything. It didn't. But because it was what I'd needed to hear for 15 years. That I mattered, that I was seen, that my work meant something. Okay, I said, wiping my eyes. I'll save the business, but not for you, for me, because I built it, and I won't watch it die because of someone else's stupidity. And I took back ownership of Anderson Auto Repair 2 days later. The paperwork was straightforward since everything had been transferred to Kyle's name just a month earlier. My lawyer, a woman I'd found who specialized in business law, made sure every document was airtight. Kyle signed over the business. He signed over the house. Everything went into my name legally and completely. The first thing I did was change the name. Anderson Auto Repair became Hope's Auto Repair. Fresh start, new identity. This business wasn't about carrying on some family legacy anymore. It was about what I'd built and what I would continue to build. Then I started making calls. I reached out to every customer who'd left personally. I apologized for the poor service they'd received. I explained that there had been a management change and that I was back in charge. I offered significant discounts on their next service to prove I was serious about regaining their trust. Marcus was the first one to come back. "I heard you bought the place back," he said when he brought his truck in. "About time. I missed working with someone who actually knows what they're doing." I hired back the 2 experienced mechanics Kyle had fired. They were thrilled to return. I fired the unqualified workers Kyle had brought in to save money. Quality mattered more than cheap labor. Amber lasted exactly 3 days trying to manage the books before she admitted she had no idea what she was doing. I took back all the accounting work. I discovered she'd missed payments to 4 different suppliers and had somehow double billed 3 customers. It took me 2 weeks to clean up her mess. Kyle showed up every morning at 7. I put him in coveralls and had him start with oil changes. Basic work, the kind of thing every person in an auto shop should know how to do. He didn't complain. For the first time in his life, my brother actually worked. I watched him struggle with things that should have been simple. Changing oil, rotating tires, checking fluid levels. He'd been the assistant manager, then the owner without ever learning the fundamentals. No wonder he couldn't run the business. He didn't understand it. But to his credit, he tried. He showed up on time. He asked questions. He apologized to customers he'd been rude to before. Slowly, painfully, Kyle started to learn what real work looked like. Within 3 months, the business stabilized. Customers were coming back. Revenue steadied. We weren't losing money anymore. Within 6 months, we were profitable again. Not quite at the levels we'd been before Kyle's disaster, but getting there. Dad and Mom still lived in the house. My house now. I charged them minimal rent, just enough to cover property taxes and maintenance. They spent their days gardening, reading, trying to make up for what they'd done. Dad would come into the shop sometimes not to work, just to watch. He'd see me managing everything, see Kyle working as my employee, and I'd catch this look of regret on his face. One day he approached me in the office. "I'm proud of you, Hope. I should have said it years ago, but I'm saying it now. You're incredible. What you've built here, what you've saved, it's remarkable." "Thank you, Dad. I wish I'd seen it sooner. I wish I'd been the father you deserved." I looked at him, this man who'd shaped so much of my pain. You can't change the past, but you can do better now. He nodded. I will, I promise. Kyle and Amber moved into a small apartment across town. Amber had to get a job, her first real job ever, at a retail store. The lifestyle she'd imagined, funded by inheritance and entitlement, had evaporated. Reality had come hard and fast, but she stuck around, and I saw her soften over time. Humility changes people if they let it. One evening, Kyle stayed late to help me close up. We'd had a busy day, and I was exhausted. He brought me a cup of coffee, something he'd never done before. Thank you for this, he said. For coffee. For the second chance. For not letting me destroy everything. For being better than I deserved. I looked at my brother, really looked at him. He'd lost weight, gained muscle from actual physical work. There was something different in his eyes. Humility, maturity. The consequences of his actions had finally taught him what a lifetime of privilege never could. You're welcome, I said, but Kyle understands something. I didn't do this for you. I did it because that business was mine. I built it, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me, not even by destroying it. I know, and I'm grateful anyway. Over the next year, my life transformed. The business grew beyond what it had been before. I opened a second location, something I'd wanted to do for years. I hired a manager I trusted to help with operations. For the first time in my adult life, I had time for myself. Time to travel, to date, to have hobbies, to be someone beyond just the woman who worked 60-hour weeks trying to prove her worth. Marcus, the customer who'd called me about Kyle's poor service, started coming around more often. We'd talk while his truck was being serviced. Eventually, he asked me to dinner. I said yes. We took it slow, but there was something real there. Something built on mutual respect and seeing each other clearly. Life wasn't perfect. There were still hard days. Still moments when I remembered the pain of being thrown away by my family, but those moments grew smaller, less sharp. I was building something new. Something that was mine. Something nobody could take away because I'd fought for it and earned it and refused to let it die. 3 years after taking back the business, I stood in the original location of Hope's Auto Repair, looking at the photos on the wall. Pictures of the team, the expanded services, the happy customers, the growth I'd created. Dad walked in, moving slower now at 68. Hope, do you have a minute? Always, Dad. He stood next to me, looking at the same photos. You know, when I started this business at 25, I thought I knew exactly how it would go. I'd build something, pass it to my son, and that son would pass it to his son. Simple, traditional, the way it's supposed to be. But that's not what happened. No, because I was thinking about tradition instead of truth. I was following a rule instead of seeing what was right in front of me. He turned to me. You didn't just save this business, Hope. You transformed it. You made it better than I ever could have imagined. And you did it while teaching your brother more about real work than I taught him in 35 years. Kyle's learned a lot, I acknowledged. My brother was assistant manager now, truly this time. He'd earned the title through 3 years of consistent effort. I've been thinking about legacy, Dad continued. About what we leave behind. I used to think legacy was a name, a tradition passed down through sons, but I was wrong. Legacy is what you build, how you treat people, the mark you leave on the world. And your legacy, Hope, is going to be so much bigger than mine ever was. I learned from you, Dad, the good parts. You took the good and left the bad. That's wisdom. He hugged me, and this time I hugged back. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing to move forward without carrying the weight of the past. Looking back now, I understand something I couldn't see when I was in the middle of the pain. That text message, that betrayal, that moment when my family chose tradition over fairness, it forced me to become who I was always meant to be. Not the daughter trying to earn approval, not the employee proving her worth, but the owner, the leader, the woman who built something remarkable because she refused to accept being invisible. I learned that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones you need protection from. My real family became the customers who valued my work, the employees who trusted my leadership, the friends who saw me when my blood family couldn't. I learned that doing the right thing isn't always easy or comfortable. Taking back that business setting those terms, demanding that apology, it felt harsh at the time. But it was necessary. Boundaries aren't cruel, they're honest. And sometimes people need to lose everything to understand what they took for granted. I don't carry anger toward Kyle and Amber anymore. Their greed cost them the easy life they'd imagined. That's consequence enough. Kyle works hard now, and I respect the man he's becoming. It took hitting rock bottom, but he finally learned what I'd known all along. Nothing worth having comes without effort. My father's apology didn't erase the hurt, but it mattered. Acknowledgement matters. Being seen matters. Hearing I was wrong from someone who raised you to believe you were less than that's powerful. It doesn't fix everything, but it's a start. The business thrives now. 3 locations, 20 employees, revenue that's tripled what it was when Dad ran it. I mentor young women who want to work in trades who face the same gender barriers I did. I show them it's possible to claim space in places that weren't built for us. And I've learned the most important lesson of all. Your worth isn't determined by people who refuse to see it. Stand your ground. Document everything. Don't be afraid to demand what you deserve. And most importantly, trust yourself. You know the truth even when others refuse to see it. If your family can't see your worth, don't dim your light trying to make them notice. Build something so bright they can't ignore it. And when they finally see, you'll have a choice to make. Forgive or walk away. Either way, you'll be free because you'll know your value doesn't come from their approval. It comes from what you've built with your own hands, your own mind, your own unbreakable will. That's the real inheritance. Not money or property or businesses passed down through bloodlines, but the strength to know who you are and refuse to be made small by people who can't see beyond their own limitations. I'm Hope. I'm 35 now, and I finally understand my name. Hope isn't passive, waiting for things to get better. Hope is active. It's building the life you deserve when the world tells you to accept less. It's fighting for yourself when no one else will. It's refusing to disappear just because someone else can't see you. That's the story of how I lost everything and gained myself, how I was pushed out and came back stronger, how I learned that sometimes the best inheritance isn't what you're given, but what you take back and transform into something entirely your own. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had to fight for recognition in your own family? Have you been overlooked because of gender birth order or outdated traditions? Drop a comment and tell me your story. I want to hear how you stood up for yourself or how you're finding the courage to do it now. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by people who refuse to see it. Subscribe to this channel because there are more stories like this. Stories of people who refused to stay invisible, who fought for what they built, who found their power in the ruins of other people's expectations. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for seeing me. And remember, you are not defined by who overlooks you. You are defined by what you build in spite of them. Keep fighting, keep building, keep shining. Your legacy is waiting for you to claim it.